everybody. Welcome back to Real Results with Coach Joe. I'm your host, Coach Joe Villegas. This is the program where we help you to improve your health, increase your wealth, and live a more fulfilling life. And I couldn't be more excited today because I have my guest, Jessica Harrington, the founder, CEO, and mastermind behind Journey to Yourself. Jessica, thank you for joining me today.
Oh my God, Joe, thanks so much for having me on here. I'm so excited.
It's my pleasure. We're going to cover a whole lot of stuff today, and I'm so excited to get into this because you are like a master of the topic of stress. At least in my world, that's how I see you. So I want to make sure we get as much packed in here today for the viewers because we are living in stressful times. There's no doubt about it. We came out of a pandemic, we're into the next recession, all these kinds of things, and there's so much going on in the world of needing to help folks mitigate that stress. So I want to hop right in. Let's get into it. Let's give the viewers a bit of background on your story. Like, how did you get into your business you have today and sort of like this passion you have for helping people take care of the stress in their lives?
Yeah, of course. So I started my career in education in the drug and alcohol field. So I was helping, my main population was helping men reduce their sentence in the jail and then coming to the rehab. So what I really noticed was a lot of my clients and my coworkers were having the same conversations over stress and burnout, financial relationships, jobs, family, holidays, a lot of things that we all say all the time. And so my mindset was, okay, so there has to be some type of education for this, and how do we get to there? So that's when, fast forward, went and got my master's in public health. After my last internship, I said, okay, now or never. So
there you go.
That's where we are.
Right on. That's great. And so, I mean, talk to me a bit about that first step of working with folks in the prison system. That sounds pretty intense. What was that like?
Never a boring day.
Right. That's one way to put it, right?
So actually, even to this day, besides my business, it probably was my favorite job I've ever had. I started there in the GED program as a volunteer and really just worked my way up through there as I was going through school.
Wow.
So it was, I joked that it was never a boring day because it wasn't. It's a very much like what we do now in my world, where I present the same outline of objectives in my workshops, but it's always a different conversation, always a different outcome. So I think if anything, it just made what I do really real.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
No doubt. I mean, to have that like raw experience behind you and then going into like a corporate setting or, more of a, let's say a blue collar to corporate setting now, I mean, that's almost got to feel like a pretty big contrast comparatively, right?
Oh, for sure. So from going from there, going to school and all the internships in between and then coming here, I definitely learned a lot along the way for sure that bring to what I'm doing now. I worked in different populations. So like I said, started in the drug and alcohol field, worked with children with special needs in the school system, worked in, low income family systems. I did a lot of that stuff as well. So definitely bring a lot of experience, for sure.
Yeah, to say the least, no doubt. So let's talk a little bit about, like you said, you heard those conversations from coworkers or friends and family that were very similar, kind of in the stress-related field. Like, let's go through some of those things that you heard and those talking points, just so the viewers can kind of get a sense of like, hey, maybe that's me too, if that's what they're relating to as well, and then we can kind of start to tackle it and jump in on it.
I would say the biggest conversation I felt talked a lot about was obviously money, right? So everyone having the financial stress, can't pay bills, want to go on vacations, can't afford it, want to take care of their kids, might not be able to afford a couple things. That was a huge stressor for a lot of people. And I think just relationships in general. So with significant others, with families, especially during the holidays, that always brings up a lot of stress. I want to see somebody or I don't want to see somebody, or this makes me think of somebody, right? So it's a lot of the everything in between, but it was the same thing, conversations I was having with my clients, and a lot of what I focus on is that communication piece when it comes to a lot of that.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And it's funny, we had a previous episode, we had Erin Hoffman on. She's a certified financial planner. I love her, she's awesome.
Love her, yeah.
And our main topic was finances as it relates to being in a relationship as a couple and how you handle that. And it's that number one driver behind like divorce and things like that as well. So very, very sensitive topic for a lot of people, right, is money in general. But then when you throw someone else in the mix, extremely stressful for sure. So there's no doubt about that. So fast forward, you started Journey to Yourself. So talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, I know what I know from doing homework and knowing you, the little bit that I do, but fill the viewers in on what this is exactly, because I want them to go check it out if they're obviously going to find this interesting. I want them to know what it's about.
Yeah, of course. So it's called Journey to Yourself because I believe the foundation of stress is a lot to do with ourselves and how we
Hmm.
perceive the stressor in our life. So I always use the example of you and I could be in the same exact car accident. The way you react and the way I'm going to react are completely different
Yeah.
based on our upbringing, based on how we perceive the situation, et cetera, et cetera. So my purpose of my business is to kind of create the awareness of stress that's in your life. And a lot of times you're like, well, I know what stress is in my life. For
Right.
sure. I'm not
Sure.
saying you don't, but I want to focus on the acute stressors because those are the ones that create the foundation for how we handle the big stressors in life. So, for example, what do you get defensive about? How do you
Hmm.
communicate with your partner? Do you make time for yourself? And what does that actually look like? And I'm
Right.
saying going past going doing your 15 to 30-minute workout. I'm saying going past meal prepping. And as much as important they are 100% important. But
Totally.
what does 5 minutes to yourself look like?
Yes.
And why is that important?
For
You know,
sure.
the way I always look at it is if all the chores are taken care of, the kids are taken care of, husband's taken care of, etc. What if I gave you that 5 minutes to do whatever you want? What would you do with it? You know?
Right. And I feel like most people probably don't take at least a minute to think about what that answer would even be in the first place, right? They're probably dumbfounded at like, well, I don't know what I would do with those 5 minutes, right? But really taking that time to do a little bit of self-care goes a long way, right? I'm sure that's probably, is that where you sort of start with folks as you get into this thing?
100%. Exactly what you just said, Joe. When I say that, people go, "Oh, I don't even know,"
Hmm.
and they automatically go to, "Oh, I'll drink more water. I'll do the workout." And again, they're so important, and I 100% they're important. But how do you get there? Because how do you create that foundation, and how do
Yes.
you get to what you actually want from it, right? So yeah, it's that 5 minutes. So my cheesy saying, and maybe you'll like this, is
Yeah.
drink the coffee while it's hot.
Love
So
it.
literally make that cup of coffee and just sit with it before it gets cold. You know?
Yeah. Like just get to it. Like get in there, get your hands dirty, and get rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
Love that. Love
exactly.
that. So, you a second ago you'd mentioned like this how we perceive stress, right? It's all relative, right? So if you and I are in the same situation, you mentioned like a car accident per se. How I handle it, how you handle it could be different based on upbringing, whatever. This might be a curveball. How much of
Let's
that
do
do
it.
you think is subconscious? Like we don't even know, right? Like I'm reacting a certain way. I just think that, oh, that's how I am. But in reality, like, is that really how you have to be? You know what I mean?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. So definitely a lot of subconscious, right? We don't take that time to actually realize what bothers us and why,
Right.
right? We might know I get defensive over a situation, right? So the example I always use, you ever see Back to the Future?
I love Back to the Future. I just Huey
Okay,
Lewis in the
so
news is on the radio coming over here. Love that movie.
so what does Marty not like being called because becomes offensive?
Like McFly? No, that's his last name.
Everyone says that. Chicken. He doesn't like being called
Chicken.
chicken,
You got me.
right?
I gotta go back and
Right.
rewatch
So we
that.
all have this thing. And so we sat down, if he was sitting right next to us, I'm like, what was it? Why don't you like being called chicken? He
Yeah.
might just be like, oh, I don't really like that name. And if we start to really talk about it, it's, oh, well, I don't like to perceive being looked at as dumb, not looked at as worthless.
Right.
I'm not strong enough, whatever that case may be, but it might take a little bit of time. But I bring that part up because we've taken that time to what makes us upset. And a lot of it is
Hmm.
what do we become defensive about? Where do I stop listening to the conversation about? When do I get that email and go, oh, whatever, it's just joke, email me again.
Right.
You know, what is that? Sorry,
Right.
Joe.
No, hey, it's okay. I don't email that often, just for the record, everybody. So we're okay. So really, it's like what sort of internal triggers you have, and the situation brings about that then lays on that stress. And would you like when we talk about stress, like can we just like define that a little more? Like to me, the way I perceive it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of like stress is stress. Like no matter what's sort of making that happen or triggering it for you, it's more of to the degree that you're experiencing it versus like this type of stress or that type of stress. Now I could be off base, but that's kind of how I see it. Would you agree that's kind of how it's formulated?
I love how you explain that in a lot of ways. So the way I define it and the way I was taught to define it is a reaction to change. And so
Hmm.
basically exactly what you said, stress is all the time. It's every day.
Right.
There's different levels of it, right? So there's no creamer in the fridge. That sucks. I get stuck in traffic. This is annoying. The
Right.
emails, right? There's different levels, right? And then they start to build up and that starts to annoy me and starts to annoy me a little bit more for
Hmm.
sure. But also, like you said, stress isn't in the sense of different levels and degrees. It doesn't mean you're always at this high state of, oh my God, I'm pulling my hair out.
Right.
That's a level of stress, but it's not the entire level of stress, you know? So
Right.
there's just the annoyance, there's the buildup of it, like you said, the different levels, degrees.
Yeah, and I like how you put that. Like it's not always this high state of arousal, right? You might
Yeah.
have it could be like that whole death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Like a little bit of things add up over time to the point where you don't even realize that it's so, like you have so much on your shoulders until it's not there. And an example of this, just kind of quick side story, I went on vacation with my family, this is years ago, and I was working like 2 jobs. I was right kind of when I started coaching. So I was coaching a ton, I was going back to school, all these things. And my mom booked a vacation for an all-inclusive in Mexico. And so we got to go there, and literally, I'd never been to an all-inclusive. I'm like, I don't get the point of this, whatever. 10 minutes in, I'm like, totally get it, this is awesome. And it wasn't until like halfway through the second day, when like I wasn't checking email, I wasn't really on my phone at all, I was just like reading and hanging out, that I literally felt like lighter, but Jessica, I couldn't even tell you, I felt so exhausted. Like I finally had a second to like rest and take a load off and just like relax. I like slept the rest of the vacation, like all throughout every day pretty much, and through the night. So it's one of those things, like I didn't realize how much stress I had in my life until it wasn't there anymore. And that was like pretty alarming to me. Like I don't know if your clients start to realize things like that.
Oh
but
my God, yeah.
It was
This
wild.
is such, oh yes, we're so aligned. Okay. This is so amazing because it's exactly what people get frustrated with meditation for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know about this. People, oh, I fall asleep. Yes, your body needs it. I paid for a massage, I fell asleep. Yes,
Right.
your body needs it. The other thing is, and I don't know if you ever experienced this, is that like when you're going off that rush and you're coming back down, a lot of us get really sick.
Yeah.
And we don't even, right? So maybe just like you said, it's that tired, or I get really sick, right? So the stressor's gone, but now I'm having a reaction. And the way I always try to explain this one is you're going on a roller coaster, right? You go up and down, you go through the
Right.
twirls, everything in between. You walk off, you're still feeling it. You're off the roller coaster, but you're still feeling it in your belly. You're still feeling like the giggles in your face, right? You're still feeling it, even though you're done the roller coaster,
Yeah,
right?
or like
So it's
being in
just
the
that
ocean.
they're coming back down.
Exactly. And so I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, but I think that analogy is a perfect segue. So, from what we see, right, talking to friends and family, like it sounds like a lot of folks are on a pretty intense roller coaster a lot of the time. High highs, low lows. What I want to do is start to dig in with you on some strategies or tips and things we can leave with the viewers for today on things they can do to maybe make the roller coaster not so intense, right? Maybe make it a little more kind of even keeled as they're going along. So what I want to do is I want to hop into that. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. And then when we come back, make sure you stick around because we're going to get into these strategies with Jessica.
What makes a Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers of flavor of the buffalo chicken salad? Or is it a secret handshake? Nah. At Wawa, there's a club for everyone. Find yours today.
We ride for those who died. The Police Unity Tour and RVN Television is bringing to you a show called On Your Honor, Straight Talk. And I'm your host, Patrick Monturi. I am a retired police chief from Florham Park, New Jersey, and I am also retired from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am currently, for the last 27 years, the CEO and founder of the Police Unity Tour. And this show will bring to you straight talk about law enforcement, the actions and heroism that is provided to you, the citizens of the United States, as well as their actions in falling in the line of duty, as we could see some of the stories that surround that. Again, please watch us on RVN Television and be safe. Take care.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nervous pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy, because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea. Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
What makes a Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers?
Welcome back to Real Results with Coach Joe. With me today, I've got Jessica Harrington. And if you missed the first part, we're just getting into the juicy stuff, talking about stress and stress management. So, Jessica, where we left off was this analogy of how a lot of times folks are on this roller coaster ride of sort of very high highs and low lows when it comes to, their emotional well-being, if you will, and dealing with stress on a day-to-day basis. So what I want to do now is kind of get more into like the tactical stuff. How do we take that roller coaster that's like totally insane, like a King to Ka, ridiculous roller coaster, and bring it down to like maybe a kiddie coaster, like make it a little more even keeled, so that their days can be maybe even a little more predictable, a little easier to go through, and life's just not so intense all the time. So I would like, it's a tall order, but I'd like to start there.
We start with the King to Cod. How I have not thought about that in so long. No. No, sorry. So of course, so strategy. So kind of like you said, putting back off the beginning. The first thing is making time for yourself. And I literally start with 1 to 5 minutes. Okay. What does 1 to 5 minutes look like for you? Is it just sitting with that cup of coffee while it's still hot? Yes. Is it drinking a glass of water? And I put it with something that you're already doing, right? So it could even just be brushing your teeth, literally thinking about how you're brushing every tooth, thinking of that sense, like being right there with you. It's 2 minutes. There's a 2-minute timer. So just think, I got this side. Okay, now I'm going to go to this side. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, think about it, Yeah. So being there for you, what does that look like? Another one I really like to focus on is communication. And when I think about communication, I always talk about in the sense of how you're communicating with yourself and how you're communicating with others. Okay. So when you think about communicating with yourself, with others, I'll start here, is avoiding the words always and never. And what I mean by that is, Joe, you come home, she's sitting there doing the dishes, and you go, hey, honey, how's the day? And she turns and goes, you never help around the house. You're always working. You're always doing this. You never do this. You're initially going to become defensive, right?
Right.
Nothing against wife, nothing against that. But now we're doing the back and forth of, the winning and losing. We're pulling stuff up from past and, Christmas. Like, remember when your mother-in-law said this and that was really true. And, the one dress you wore, right? We're going back and forth about things. And we never actually go, hey, Joe, Tuesday nights, I work really late. Can you do dishes and frozen pizza to help with the kids?
Yep.
Different story, right?
Totally. And I like that so we start with this roller coaster analogy, and it's like the language you're using, if we kind of get those extremes out of the way, it already brings it down, already turns the dial down a little bit on what could happen. Like, you're getting in front of this stress that you could be causing, could be causing the other person and then in turn causing it back on yourself. So I think that's a great place to start. And I mean, past episodes we've had here, like Jeff Wickersham, when Coach Jeff was on, like we talked a lot about the language you use, with yourself especially. So I know you're about to touch on that next. So let's go to that one next before I get too excited.
Yeah, of course. So the way I like to picture talking to yourself. So the way I try to always describe it is think about the things we say to ourselves throughout the day, right? So we set the standards for how others show up for us. So if I'm calling myself negative, I'm calling myself stupid, if I'm calling myself ugly, throughout the day, I'm going to look through validations for that. Yep. That one email shows that I'm stupid. That one email shows that I'm not good enough at work. Yep. The way he didn't say I love you when he hung up, that means he doesn't love me and I'm worthless. So the way I try to picture this is, when you think about all the things you said to yourself throughout the day. So if I had a little note card, right? I have a little note card, and I wrote in here, you're ugly, you're worthless, no one loves you, you stop trying, you're not cared about, you're a bad mom, you're a bad dad, et cetera, et cetera. And I put on top of that card, dear mom, dear sister, dear best friend. And I go, here you go. Here's a letter I wrote for you.
Yeah.
And the way I ask people, I go, would you ever send that to somebody? And they're always like, no, that shows I don't love them. It means I don't respect them. It means I don't care. I'm going, but these are the things that you say to yourself every day.
Exactly.
So what do you mean?
It's like the the air on the airplane. You got to put your mask on first. Like, treat yourself well, and then in turn you'll have more to give to others, right? You can't give if your cup's empty. So I think that is a great place to start. And language, it's so much more than the credit that people give it, right? Like, we talk in these extremes where we exaggerate a lot, right? It's not a good place to be. And then moreover is how you treat yourself. And it begins with that language. And like you said, if you're saying, hey, I'm dumb, stupid, ugly, whatever, that's the identity that you're giving to yourself. And that's how you see yourself. And obviously that's not good. So let's say we take it back a couple steps. So we set aside a minute or two for ourselves in the day, which, to folks watching might not seem like a lot, but you have to start somewhere. You know, when I
Yes.
was coaching at CrossFit, folks would come in and say, hey, I want to do this program, or I want to lift this much weight and whatever. It's like, well, are you coming in 3 times a week, 4 times a week consistently? No. Well, let's start there. Like, take a step back. So if 1 to 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot to you, if you're watching this, Mom, hello, is more than my mom's watching, I hope. But if 1 to 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, is just start there and give it a try. And if you can do that for, what would you say, Jessica, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that, you're probably on a good path
Yeah,
to then
I say,
stack other
sorry, go
stuff.
ahead.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I definitely say start there and check. And when you're doing that, you're checking in with yourself. So if you can only do 1 minute today and 5 minutes tomorrow, that's okay.
Yeah.
And when you're having these 1 to 5 minutes, it's literally just saying, what do I need? What is the one thing I need right now? And when I mean right now, I mean in that 1 minute, right? So is there
Right.
something I can do for myself today? What does that look like? Right.
Yes.
And so just breaking it down by bite-sized pieces is the best way to do it. And like I said, in that minute, what looks realistic? Okay, well, what I need is more water in my life. What I need is more sunshine in my life. What I need is to journal right now. What I need is my mom right now.
Right.
So what is it that I need? But even going back to, working at CrossFit, the physical part that you bring into the picture a lot is, and I definitely do not, so don't ask me any of this, but, is having that check-in, because as you know, this is a physical thing. So is my body hurting? Did that not feel good yesterday? Do
Yeah.
I need to stretch more today? Right? So it goes hand in hand with a lot of the other things you're doing. So it helps build that foundation for where you want to go later.
Totally. I think that's spot on. And again, love the fact that it's so compact, right? Like 1 to 5 minutes, because what's like the most overused excuse on the planet? I don't have time, right? Well, it's like,
Oh
well,
my God, yeah.
if you don't have any time, then how can you blame it? You don't have any, right? So what I tell folks when I work with them is, again, same deal as you, is, hey, 5-10 minutes, just go for a walk. Listen to that podcast you haven't tuned into in a while that you like to listen to. Listen to your favorite music. Call your parents, whatever. But take that time. I think maybe you would agree with this, but a great question to ask if you're saying, well, what do I do in that time, that 1 to 5 minutes, is, what would bring me joy right now? What's something that could just kind of like spice my day up a little bit, make it a little more fun for me that I enjoy doing? Maybe that's, playing an instrument. Maybe that's playing video games. I don't know, whatever. But something hopefully constructive and positive that you can insert in that 1 to 5 minutes to just kind of brighten up the day a little bit and then get back to what you were doing if, let's say, you're tight on time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I see, like we kind of mentioned earlier too, is that not everybody knows what to do in that 1 to 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if your first couple weeks is just making a list of what you want, you can start there.
Yeah.
There's not, oh, I should know. You're learning. There's nothing wrong with relearning about yourself. We all go through different stages of our life. You grew a business, you started this career, you started a family, you moved to this state, you started a new job, right? There's different stages throughout your life. So that's why these check-ins are so important, to keep going back to what is making you happy today. Because what made you happy 10 years ago might not make you happy today. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally. We're always changing, right? We're always changing. So, and I like that approach of, all right, you don't know what to do, then spend the time just writing down things you want to do. And eventually you'll make a list big enough that you'll have more than enough to do. And then you can start, choose your own adventure, right? Each time something new and fun that you can do. So
Exactly. Kind of
I think
eliminate
it's
those excuses,
Exactly. So I think that's great, and it kind of gives people that freedom to be creative, right? Like who gets to say, hey, I'm a creative every day, just living my life? Like probably not all that often. So this is a great way to get that going. So I think this is a great place for people to start. I don't want to give them too much to do, right? Like if you're watching this and you're like, hey, I don't know where to begin, we just gave you the answer. We gave the answers to the test. So start there. Let's switch gears a little bit. So I know that, kind of similar to me, where I do corporate wellness stuff, you go in and speak with companies and in various, domains as far as the professions go, which is really interesting, as we talked about previously. But tell us a little bit about that. Like for folks who are watching, maybe, they work at a company and they could use someone like you to come in and talk about these stress management topics. What do you do with these groups and the folks that you help there?
Yeah, of course. So what I do is I have a 6-month series program. I say it's my 6-month menu. So basically you can choose out of all the 6 or one of the 6, however you want to do your buffet, right? So I always tell people, as much as I love yoga and meditation, this is the slowest and quietest I can speak. So it's probably not the best for me to teach. But I do love them. Please go try it out. But before you get there, so what I really do with my classes is there's stress management. So what the heck is stress, right? We broke it down a little bit. For example, one of the words you keep using, and I've used even in the definition of stress, is change, when change actually means growth, right? So breaking that down, going into deeper 5 habits of that help you relieve stress. How do you actually you react compared to how I react. Remember we were talking about that in the beginning.
Yep.
What is burnout? How to prevent it? Work-life balance, what the heck even that is, and how do you do it? Because it's really not 50-50 as much as we want to tell ourselves this. Communication again. So communication, what's urgent, what's not urgent, what's chain of command, how am I speaking to the people in my group when I'm feeling defensive with somebody, when Joe emails me in the morning. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't send that many emails.
And sorry, Joe. Team building, what does that actually look like, right? So how am I listening to my teammates? How am I doing that? How am I communicating? And then mindfulness. So the same thing. What actually is mindfulness? It's a huge buzzword, just like stress is. And a lot of people think it's meditation, which meditation is amazing. That's part of mindfulness, but it's not the all and be all. So how do we create that?
Gotcha. So let's go back to that pillar of work-life balance a little bit, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions in what that is. And I've heard the phrase, I think it was Jack Welch who might have said it, it was like there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work-life choices, and those choices have consequences. So kind of like real quick, let's kind of cover that one and maybe sort of demystify it for folks if we can.
Yeah, of course. So the way I like to break it down, I actually bring in a balance scale. I basically just say, okay, this is how much time we spend at work. Like we go into work early. We spend the 8 hours at work. We then we work through our lunch break. Then we spend overtime. Then we come in on Saturdays. Then we come home and we answer emails. And we see the balance scale going over and more.
Yep.
And then I go on our lifestyle. I'm going, okay, well, I ate dinner, but I was on the phone the whole time answering work emails. So I go back to that, right? So it's showing the scale of what, in sense of priorities, right? And so when I think of the balance scale of the work-life balance, it's very much, where am I setting boundaries and priorities throughout my life, right? So how am I able to have dinner with my family and just sit there? Well, if you're given 8 hours a day to do your job, why are you not getting it done in that 8 hours that you have to work later? Right? So let's start there. What's happening there? When I'm working on the weekends and I'm not, going to being with my family, why? Right. So setting those priorities and and that boundaries, because I set those standards, right? So it's having that conversation with myself. And also when I bring it to the team, it's really going, okay, does the manager really want this? And what does that look like? Right.
So again, it comes back to that communication piece that you mentioned,
good old word.
What's being communicated to me, and do I understand what the expectation is? So really, I think, and not to get too deep into it because we're limited on time, but for work-life balance, like you mentioned, I think a great place to start for folks is understanding, like, what are my boundaries? What are the expectations for me and my role at work? And do I really need to be like on my phone that much and answering emails and things like that? I think just like the 1 to 5 minutes, that's a great place for folks to start. So with that, we're going to kind of wrap things up. But Jessica, where can people find you if they want to learn more about all that you do? Maybe they want to reach out and work with you one-on-one, which I know they would greatly benefit from. So plug away. Where can they find you?
Yeah, of course. We're going to get Joe on this, so I'll tell this one day. So follow me on my podcast, Stress Less with me, Jess, where I interview amazing people like Joe. And also my website has journeytoyourself.net, which has my direct email, any of the social media platforms on. It has all my brochure, emails, things like that are on there as well.
Fantastic. It's awesome. So definitely if you're watching this, go check out all of Jessica's stuff. And if you'd like some more free download and content from past episodes, head over to resultswithjoe.com. We've got all the stuff you want there to help you improve your health, increase your wealth, and live a more fulfilling life. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
Yes.
All right. See you on the next episode, everybody.